Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 2nd of August 2021, and these are the stories that we will be discussing during the course of the show. We will begin, ladies and gentlemen, with Pakistan's endeavors to make the US understand that it should not abandon Afghanistan. This was reiterated during a visit of the National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf, as well as the chief of the ISI, to the United States of America, where they met different important leaders, including Jake Sullivan, the US National Security Advisor. The importance of the future for Afghanistan and the probable US role is extremely important in the way Afghanistan is moving forward as far as what is happening in the country is concerned now that the US and NATO troops are exiting Afghanistan. What needs is not only a proper US presence, but also the role that will be played in the future and in the present by Russia, China and Pakistan. This is going to be our first segment. Now, our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be India. That is assuming the presidency, and that is assumed, in fact, the presidency of the United Nations Security Council from today for the month of August. It is set to organize three very important meetings, one of which will be virtually addressed by Narendra Modi. Pakistan's ambassador to the United Nations, Munir Akram, has said that we will be watchful but not concerned when he was asked about Pakistan's reaction to this month-long presidency. Let's see how that happens. This is going to be our second segment of the day. Our third segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the fires that have engulfed Turkey. As we know, there are different fires, more than 100 fires that have engulfed different parts of Turkey, 122 massive fires, most of which have been under control, but some are still not under control. Rajab Tayyip Erdogan has said that the involvement of terrorist organizations such as the PKK cannot be denied. This is going to be our third segment of the day. And then we will talk about an unlikely method through which both Pakistan and India kind of came together. This was through Ghazi Taimur, and it happened at the end of July. He found a wallet of an Indian guy named Rahul on Shoreditch High Street, and he searched for him all across London and finally found him and returned his wallet to him. One way or the other, this brought the two communities together. This is going to be our last segment. Let's come to our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the future of Afghanistan, the probable role of the US, and the visit of Moeed Yusuf and the DGISI to the United States of America. More in the following report.
The prospect of protracted war in Afghanistan and its consequent detrimental fallout upon Pakistan and regional countries is ratcheting up strategic anxiety. Against the backdrop of deteriorating security situation in Afghanistan, National Security Advisor Dr. Moeed Yusuf dashed to Washington last week in order to discuss the fast-evolving situation. The agenda of this high-level engagement was dissecting the Afghan gambit and future trajectory of Pakistan-US ties. While addressing a press conference late Saturday at the Pakistani Embassy in Washington, D.C., National Security Advisor emphasized that there has been a positive response on the collaboration between the US and Pakistan. Reportedly, Pakistan pressed the US to not hastily leave the Afghan morass prior to materialization of an inclusive political settlement owing to far-reaching security repercussions of the Afghan civil war for the region. The US has historically reviewed its relationship with Pakistan from Afghan prism, and as Afghan endgame is unraveling, the time is ripe to reset the ties. Furthermore, both countries are facing shared security threats emanating from war-ravaged Afghanistan, and hence there is a dire need for close collaboration on the Afghan front. Earlier, Premier Imran Khan reiterated that the US really messed it up in Afghanistan, and the only solution to salvage the situation is through a comprehensive political settlement forged by a consensus of all political factions, including Taliban.
I will talk more about the probable role of US in the future of Afghanistan and also the role of China and Russia as well as Pakistan. We've been joined by Shabana Fayaz. She's an international affairs expert. Shabana Fayaz, thank you very much to have joined us. Ma'am, the visit of Moeed Yusuf and the DGISI to US, meeting with Jake Sullivan and other important members of the US administration and talking about the future of Afghanistan. How important are these discussions in your point of view?
That it is a very we are living in. What Pakistan in the neighborhood of, and that suffered from the instability that from time to time has gripped Afghanistan. This is a very well-timed visit, and it is a very proactive diplomacy that Pakistan is pursuing. And the aim is basically has been to sensitize the U.S. about the pitfalls of leaving the Afghanistan in the very bleak situation without having implemented or ensuring the guarantees for a sustainable peace process on ground.
All right, ma'am, when you talk of sustainable peace process, I mean, in Afghanistan following the exit of US, do you feel that the US has understood? Do you feel that the US, as our Prime Minister said, was now in a position of weakness rather than a position of strength? Had it, now that it is exiting Afghanistan, do you feel that it has understood the perspective of this whole regional game or the scenario that is happening as we speak in Afghanistan, and that there might be some changes as far as the US policy towards Afghanistan is concerned?
I really feel, Omar Saab, what has happened is that the US has the liberty to change the matrix of its involvement in Afghanistan that it has always followed during the last 20 years or so. Their initial program was to finish off Al Qaeda, get the OBL out from there, evict that, and institute their so-called, pro-democratic sort of arrangement in Afghanistan. But the fact is that the situation has not delivered to their ends, and it is because of the very split situation in Afghanistan that has persisted over time, and also the lack of credibility that the Afghan government, Kabul government, has not been able to enjoy the whole legitimacy throughout Afghanistan. So there are many factions that are based in Afghanistan. What has happened is that the US is taking an exit from Afghanistan. Of course, it will remain concerned. It will be doing operations from Uzbekistan bases and so on and so forth. But at the time is that they are playing more towards their domestic ground, and as the Biden has said, it's time to go home. So this is what they are more worried about, and unfortunately, this is a very myopic view, and that really upsets the regional powers and the neighborhood of Afghanistan.
All right, when you talk of the neighborhood of Afghanistan, let's talk about Pakistan, China, Russia, India, Iran, and so many other players that are, of course, involving themselves directly or indirectly as far as the future of Afghanistan is concerned now that the US is exiting. Do you feel that the US understands the complexity of the situation, because Pakistan certainly does? And do you feel that the meeting that is going to be held later between the US, Pakistan, and other countries that, of course, will be talking of Afghanistan, will pave the role for a strategy that could be beneficial for Afghanistan and the neighborhood countries?
Yes, I think that is if this meeting that is supposed to be an extended troika that will be involving Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Russia, and US. If that materializes, it may be, minus Afghanistan, it may deliver something good for the stability in Afghanistan, and also deal with the apprehensions of both China, Russia, and Pakistan at the same time. It may be another opportunity that US is looking forward to forge at least a very workable and stable relationship with the countries and the great powers that are on the peripheries of Afghanistan.
All right, ma'am. Now, Pakistan's delegation, of course, that comprised of Moeed Yusuf Saab and the DG ISI, are meeting with different leaders, have met with different important leaders, and Moeed Yusuf Saab also addressed a media brief at the Pakistan's embassy in Washington regarding the matters that were discussed, more or less, I mean, giving a small brief on it. He talked about, he said that Afghanistan was not the only thing that was discussed during the different meetings. They also talked about moving the relationship and the cooperation between Pakistan and the United States forward in different domains that includes climate change, health, COVID, commerce, and investment. How optimistic are you as far as the future of US-Pakistan relations are concerned, seeing the exit of the US from Afghanistan and the tilt that it has towards India?
Well, I will not take such a really pessimistic view of prospects of US-Pakistan relations. I think Pakistan-US relationship has a whole history to it, and there have been, of course, it has phases of sanctions, support, mutual collaboration, peace deals, and supporting one another through thick and thin. And I really feel that Biden administration is sensitive to what is happening within Pakistan and the role that Pakistan can play in the overall South Asian scenario, and of course related to the other major developments across Asia as well. To say that it is very black and white will be a very short-lived comment. I really feel is that there has to be a proactive diplomacy at both ends, specifically on part of Islamabad, because the fact is that we need Pakistan. I personally feel cannot afford to be in one camp, either with China or with Russia or with the US at the expense of one another. We really, the country, medium-sized power that we need to look for different opportunities that is available for our economic growth and prosperity, and also something that can add to the more business ventures and the exchange of technology that can be provided for the uplift of Pakistan in the next generations to come.
All right. Thank you very much, Shabana Fayaz Saiba, to have given us an outlook of Pakistan-US relations in the context of the meeting that was held between both the national security advisors in the US very recently.